Manifesto for Inclusive Development document. And then we have the project director and a very experienced governance activist, and also happens to be our executive director. I'll give more information when we get there about the personalities. So we've selected these two sectors to have a brief highlight of issues that were covered under these sectors. Then we expect the political parties to give us some fraternal messages about how they see the publication and how relevant they think it will be to them for the 2020 manifesto, and also as key political stakeholders, how they're going to use the document to engage each other. We invite my executive director.
Cdd Ghana has been around for the better part of 20-something years. We celebrated our 20th anniversary just about a couple of years ago. And we have consistently been interested in this issue of democratic development and governance in Ghana, and inclusive development. So since our founding, we have been very active. If you have followed our activities, we've been very active, especially during election years, on election support program. What we have tended to do with election support has been to really just make sure that the environment exists for free and fair election, for public participation in election, and for election management to be credible. So we've developed quite a record of engagement on election support activities. For this 2020 election, however, we decided, in addition to the regular election support activity that we are doing, which involves election observation, trying to create platforms at local levels for different candidates and participants to engage in issues, we thought it would be important to also begin to delve into the issue of manifestos, political party manifestos. Party manifestos have been around since party politics became part of our system in the 1950s, actually, going back all the way back to the 1950s. And in fact, I think probably the most famous political party manifesto promise was the Self-Government Now manifesto promise in the CPP, the first CPP manifesto promise that Nkrumah put out to compete against the UGCC's self-government in the shortest possible time. Since then, whenever we have had electoral politics, whenever military regime has been put back and we have resumed democratic politics, parties have put out manifestos. But I think it would be true to say that until the Fourth Republic, manifestos had not really mattered very much. And I think the reasons why they seem to be mattering more and more in the Fourth Republic is obvious. The Fourth Republic has endured the longest. We have had the opportunity of party turnover in government, one party replacing the other. We've done that multiple times. And the competition between the two main parties has gotten very, very intense and very close. So I think the parties can no longer afford to take issues for granted. So we are beginning to see the emergence of issue politics more and more. And with issue politics, manifestos then become important. How can we tell that manifestos have become important? I think the last election, 2016 election, it wasn't the only election where manifestos were important, but we began to see an election fought largely on manifestos. You know, the NDC put out its Green Book with its list of programmatic accomplishments in infrastructure and other things. And the NPP put out its manifestos and promised in the manifesto all manner of things. In fact, before that, during President Mills's, the late President Mills's time as president, the Deputy Chief of Staff in his presidency was made responsible for implementing manifestos. And we have seen under the NPP a similar highlight of manifestos in the government. In fact, with the NPP, they have actually gone ahead to create certain special purpose ministries just to implement manifesto promises. So we have Ministry of Special Initiatives. What do? They are the ones supposed to be implementing one constituency, $1 million. We have seen Ministry for Railway Development, even though there's a Ministry for Transportation. Because there's a particular promise around railway, there's been a ministry for that. Ministry for Regional Creation of Regions and Region Development. So you can see that the parties are now beginning to even organize themselves in government along the lines of implementing manifesto promises. So some have said that we are entering an era of government by manifesto. So what we decided at CDD was that, okay, if indeed this is where we are, how do we become a part of this whole new frame of politics or government? There are, of course, there are pros and cons to governing by manifesto, right? But that we can have that conversation separately, right? But what we decided was that we will take the manifesto, governing by manifesto development for what it is, but then begin to then engage in a process where the manifestos will begin to reflect more like a social contract. So as of now, manifestos are developed internally by parties alone. We don't know, for the most part, how that process goes on within the parties. Citizens don't have an opportunity to make input into that process. But when the manifestos come out and the parties sell it, they sell it as if it's a social contract between us and them, between the party and the citizens, so that once you endorse the manifesto and you vote for the party, they take it as if this is a contract and we have now been given the mandate to implement our manifesto. So we took it from that point of view and said, okay, if that's the way the political parties are going to see manifestos as a social contract, then like all contracts, it must be the terms of the contract must be drawn by the two parties. The two parties being the political parties on the one hand, and the citizenry on the other hand. So that's what we decided to do. That then let us try and find what is it that the people want the parties to talk about in their manifestos. Then feed that input into the party process, even before they come out with their manifestos. So using our work that we have done with Afrobarometer as a starting point, where that gives us an idea, we ask questions about what you think is going right, what is going wrong. We then began to collect some data. But then we decided that it is not sufficient to just ask the public what they want. They will give you a long list of brick and mortar things. We need roads, we need hospitals and schools. So we said, okay, there's a lot of material out there on different sectoral problems in Ghana. So why don't we consult these different sources, bring stakeholders from this sector, experts from that sector, and put together a document that is not going to tell the parties what to do. Right? Because typically the parties think that we CSOs like to tell them what to do too much and that we are not politicians. It's okay. We'll leave you to do your politics and we'll do our CSO business. So what we'll do is not give you a laundry list of things you must do, but we'll give you a catalog of the problems, the gaps, the challenges that we have identified from all these sources in various sectors of society and of the economy and of governance. And we will make that available to you while you are preparing your manifestos as an input, so that you can then decide as a party how you are going to solve through your manifestos, what are you going to do about these issues and these problems. So this is what we set out to do and did. And we were able to accomplish it in good time to send them to the parties. So we have met the parties, we've presented them our findings, organized sector by sector, and It is now, the ball is now in their court for them to figure out what kinds of prescriptions or solutions they propose to the problems that we have been able to gather from all the different research, all the work that we've done and put together in this publication. So this is what we have done. And once we did that, we thought, okay, if it's a two-way street, we've done one part, we've gathered all the data, evidence we have, we've compiled it, we've given it to the parties in the hope and expectation that they too will reflect on it and in their manifesto development come out with prescriptions and solutions to the problems. But then we have to go back to the people and say, okay, this is what we have, and begin to engage a conversation with them about this document to prepare the ground when the parties release their manifestos. Then we know what it is that, how we can frame the conversation with the parties. Once they present their manifestos, we are going to return and then begin to look at what it is that they are proposed by way of solution to some of these problems. Why, for example, have they ignored this problem? Why are they proposing to do it this way as opposed to that way? How much are they going to spend doing it this way as opposed to that way? And then we begin to have a healthy conversation within the campaign season about manifestos. Right? So we have not sat at CDD and come up with a list of things for MPP and NDC to do or CPP to do. We have done some extensive research.
CDD having implemented election projects since 2000, saw the need to add manifestos as a critical component of our election portfolio. So starting this year, we are working on the Manifesto for Inclusive Development project funded by the Department for International Development. Without rehashing all that Prof has said over and over again, as a moderator, I want to invite the chairperson for today's event in the person of Mr. Wilson Atta, who has 26 years working experience.
We are all aware of why we have assembled here this morning. I am optimistic that we will all contribute to make this effort of CDD and its partners a resounding and absolute success. Naturally, Ghanaians love democracy in its true sense. They want to be free to express themselves. They want to be free to control their thoughts. They want to have the security to be free to move about as they struggle to improve their individual and collective lot in society. And they want to be free to live and develop in peace. This explains why there was spontaneous and prolonged jubilation countrywide when the first Republican government was overthrown in 1966. That is why all Ghanaians, since the onset of the Fourth Republic, are tenaciously carrying democracy on our shoulders like Atlas, the mythical ancient Greek giant who carried the world on his shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, the fire of democracy has to be constantly stoked to keep it burning perpetually. One of such firemen is the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana for short. It is an independent, non-governmental and non-profit research and advocacy entity which promotes democracy, good governance, and economic openness and emancipation in Ghana and Africa, fighting on fronts such as governance, economy, agriculture, minerals and gas extraction, social protection, education, health, housing, security, and public safety and transport. The CDD believes that two heads are better than one, and that unity is strength. So it does not work in isolation. It brings all stakeholders on board to collectively stoke the ideals of democracy for the well-being and welfare of the people of Ghana. It is in manifestation of this belief that the CDD has invited political parties which are mandated by the 1992 Constitution to shape the political will of the people for development, civil society organizations which champion the ideals of true democracy, and the media which since independence has been the voice of the voiceless even in the face of persecution and incarceration in prison today, to today's gathering, which seeks to promote the well-being and welfare of Ghanaians as they enjoy their natural and inalienable rights as human beings. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Commission for Civic Education has been charged by the 1992 Republic Constitution to create and sustain within the society the awareness of the principles and objectives of the Constitution as the fundamental law of the people of Ghana, educate and encourage the public to defend it at all times against all forms of abuse and violation, and in short, to educate Ghanaians to become good and active citizens even as they enjoy their rights and freedoms. If an august institution like the CDD has deemed it prudent to invite NCCE to partake of this morsel of national development, then I, who is the representative, jokingly accept the opportunity to be part of this regional dialogue. As I said earlier that two heads are better than one and unity is strength, let us all immerse ourselves in this dialogue which accrue to the sustainability of our dream to secure for ourselves and posterity, probity and accountability, the principle of universal adult suffrage, the rule of law, and the protection and preservation of fundamental human rights and freedoms, unity and stability for our nation, Ghana.
Now, first we have to decide, given limited resources, so first of all we developed a concept note and sent it to a few donors. And we got an invitation from the Department for International Development, UK, DFID, to come to a meeting to discuss the concept note. At the meeting, they expressed interest in the idea, in the things that we wanted to do, and said they would be willing to support it. But of course, their resources are limited, like everybody's resources. So they said, well, we can't support a comprehensive, whole government kind of manifesto for development project. But if you limit yourself to certain sectors, that is reasonable, we can. So we decided to focus on 10 sectors, 10 thematic areas or sectors. These are governance, the economy, agriculture, extractives, which is oil and gas and mining, social protection and marginalized groups, education, health, housing, security and public safety, and transportation. In the course of doing this, COVID intervened. So we decided to drop an 11th box, right, on COVID, but not to look at COVID extensively, just drop it there and just highlight a few problems. How did we select these 10 sectors? Well, first we looked at how the business of government itself is organized by ministry. Government is organized sectorally. So we looked at how government is set up generally, not in any particular government, but over time. How is the government system structured in the country? How is it divided into sectors? We also look at the party manifestos over the period. How have they structured their manifestos sectorially? And also how Parliament's business, not just the executive, but how Parliament is also structured by committee, because the committees interact with these various sectors. And then we also took into consideration, and this is where the CDD part comes in, right? We as an organization have certain interests. We are interested in democracy, in good governance, and inclusive development. These are the three pillars of the work that we do. So we also took advantage of this project to look at those sectors that we think will at least make at least one contribution to two criteria that we developed. The sector must have a direct and substantial impact on human development and the quality of life of Ghanaians, or the capacity to catalyze or propel system-wide change. So we wanted to focus on sectors that affected directly the quality of life of Ghanaians, human development issues. But also we wanted to focus on those sectors where if some good things were to happen there, might change or might propel change in the whole system. So that a sector where there was a potential to really change the way this country is organized and the way business is done if you did some small change in that area. So if you met that criteria, then you were included in the sector. So this is how we came by the 10 sectors that I have mentioned. Having decided on the sectors, we now have to develop within each sector sub-themes. What are the thematic areas within the sector that are relevant? And in each thematic areas, what are the problems? What are the gaps? What are the challenges that we need the parties to focus on? This was the real crux of the whole exercise. So we first, to develop this, we first undertook a depth study using some of our own internal staff, and then a few consultants that we hired. So first we went through a list of the various commitments that the government of Ghana, not any one particular party, but the government of Ghana has made as a country. So we look at international commitments at the global level. Sustainable development goals. Ghana has signed on to sustainable development goals and committed to meet certain benchmarks by certain dates, 2030, 20. So we have those commitments there. That's at the UN level. And then at the AU level, we also have commitments. Some of it flowing out of the SDGs. So we look at the regional commitments we have made at the AU level as well. What are those commitments? Because once you make a commitment at the international level that you are going to leave nobody behind in education, for example, then you have your national effort must reflect that commitment so that you can deliver on the promise. So that your manifesto must capture it somehow. So that was the idea. If we have signed on to certain commitments internationally, how are we going to deliver on those commitments through the manifestos that the parties are putting out? So we looked at that. And then we came, after the UN level and the continental level, we came to Ghana itself. What are the commitments? What commitments do we have that governments must follow through? It is true that we don't have a binding national development plan that every government must tie into. But it doesn't mean we don't have commitments. When you look in the directive principles of state policy, it gives us the national commitments we have made as a country on various things. The fundamental human rights chapter of the Constitution also has certain national commitments in education, in children's rights, in certain areas. So these are all commitments that as a country we have taken up. So how are the parties going to manifest these kinds of commitments in their manifestos? So we look at the guiding principles of state policy. We look at various reports on Ghana that bind us, Africa Peer Review Mechanism. We have subscribed to it. We have invited them to come to Ghana to assess our performance periodically. what have the reports said about Ghana, what are the gaps that we have accepted we will fix about ourselves. So we took all of those on board. Then we reviewed various government policy and planning documents and reports. There's plenty.
To really spend time to delve into more details interestingly, for those of us who had the opportunity to be on this project, we went a bit back and forth. I personally, again, another learning opportunity, had to work very hard and come to terms with the new dimension that CDD was trying to promote. And it was quite unique for me because now I was not only supposed to say that the party should do this, the party should do that, the party should do this. I am required to throw the issues to the party and say, these are the issues. Now, you political parties get together either in small groups or in committees or in large bodies, discuss the problems and come out with solutions that we can all agree with. So then we have a basis by which we can measure the performance of the party going forward. And I thought that was a very, very significant new shift in the way we do politics in this country. And I want to emphasize that now, under the auspices of CDD, we have entered what we have always desired and dreamt of in this country, which is issues-based politics. So with this document, we have entered that realm, and I believe that as you go through it, you realize that it's talking about issues, real issues that concern the Ghanaian populace and our expectations for what we want to see political parties develop. So for education, what we have presented in the publication that you have with you are what we refer to as the burning issues. The points that some of you might say that these are recurrent things, these have happened and have been with us all over the years, so why are we going back to it? But it's important to look at them on the basis of the issues that we want to present. So if you look at the publication, you realize that we've gone through all the various areas that many of you are familiar with, and especially around the significant thematic areas that education has all through the years built its performance around. So we know, we have a fact, we all understand that over the years since the introduction of education in this country, there have been significant successes in terms of interventions that governments in and out have sought to bring to education in this country. But we know that in the midst of all of these interventions, some of which have been quite successful, we still have a large portion of our children not being in school, particularly at the basic level. So that for us is a challenge. We say that leave no child behind. We say that increase access and participation for all. But here you have close to over 400,000 children out of school. So it's a problem. We need to begin to understand and get government to respond to this situation. Why is it that despite all of these issues, we still have 400,000 children who are not in school? So we said the thing to the political parties, think about it and tell us what you do, because we'll measure you at the end of the day when it comes to it. And some of the issues that, again, as I said, you already know, issues about access to education based on physical access to schools. So within that, we raise the issues of disability. We raise the issues of the number of children who should be in school who are even disabled and therefore need support to be able to come to school. And we realize that we are not creating opportunity for those people. We are not having an inclusive education system. So we need that. At the foundational level, we need to build an environment where we have learners who, in spite of their physiology, can still have opportunity to go to school. So we raise that and say, political parties, what are you going to do about this? We have a huge segment of our population who are disabled, especially our children, who are not in school. But these are human beings, they are us. So what do you want to do to them? We want to see action in that area and ensure that we have an inclusive system. So even as we do all of these things, we come to the issue of the quality aspect of education. And we realize that despite all the success, we still have critical learning outcomes challenges in the system. And for those of you who are familiar with some of the exercises that have been done, the national education assessments that were done around EGRA or early grade reading assessment and early grade mathematics, consistently, we've done that exercise over 2 cycles. Consistently, we have had 2% of our children not being able to hit the expected. Only 2% of our children are able to go beyond that. So what happened to the 98%? Are we getting results? Why do we have 100% of children and only 2%, even at their level, can do things? We need the politicians to think around the issues of learning outcomes. We don't want to tell them that do it. They would have to sit down, negotiate however they want to do it, and start thinking about what to do to improve learning outcomes within the system. Why do we have people who are paying with hard-earned money, and then we have teachers who are not going to school? What is the problem? Look at it, come up with some of the issues that are needed to make things happen. And these are issues around the basic education level. But when we come to the secondary level, you will also realize that one of the promises that came up in the last election was free SHS, and everybody was joyous. And again, it gives me an opportunity, with the permission of CDD, to say that this document should not be even perceived or even looked at from the point of view of beginning to pick cherries in terms of criticism against government. It is not a criticism of government policy. So it is important to look at it very, very objectively. So the analysis was done in such a way that, yes, free SHS has come. Everybody has gone to school. Question is, are we getting the most out of that? How can we do this free SHS so that we get more value out of the free SHS? So we present the issues to them. We say, look, under a free SHS system, the pupil-teacher, student textbook ratio is not going correctly. We have students who are having textbook challenges. And even within the free SHS system, there is an unspoken requirement that parents should now buy elective books. I don't know if you are a parent and your child is in secondary school, you know about this. The question is, should that be the case? What can we do to make this very, very efficient? Now, if you all looked at yesterday's graphic, there was a certain publication in graphic, and here I'm talking about how can we fix the issue of completion rate. For those who are the journalists and those who are looking at it, take your time and look at yesterday's graphic, and then you see a certain emerging trend. And that trend is what is being represented here about the issue of low completion rate. We screamed, free SHS, put the numbers in. At the end of the day, we enroll people. By the time they get to 3rd year, the number just goes down to the ground. And we are wondering, why is it that we have free SHS and the number of children we started are not the same children that we are finishing with? What is wrong? So think through it, because we are talking about quality education for all and the need for people to continue on in because SDG 4 talks about lifelong technical schools. Many of you know that TVET is something that people have made a lot of statements about. Maybe person may not a doctor. Now person may want to be a doctor, now no carpenter. Now they move back because they are in university, no mere doctor. It will be part of the technical school. Some of these perceptions about technical school. But we all know today that if you want the sector that drives the economy is the technical section. And we are all gradually shouting. The awareness is being created. So that is a very positive space for government or political parties to begin to think around. So we say that, look, there's a challenge. There's a disconnect in the secondary or second cycle education relating to the importance of technical vocational education and training. Think about it and fix it. Because we don't want a situation where you have, and somewhere we try to raise the issue, look, we have a dual policy here. You come and say 3 SHS, so everybody thinks it's for those who are going to all the secondary schools and wanting to be doctors. Not for those who want to train technicians and be engineers and go to the oil rigs and do all of those things. You know, we don't want those kind of policies. Think through it. Second cycle is the thing. Technical vocational is one of the areas. So think about it and find a solution to it. We want a proper integration of TVET within the overall education system. So consider that and let's see how it goes. And again, in those areas too, we have highlighted the need for government to begin to reflect on the difficulty and the outcomes that we expect to see. We are not getting too many people graduating from those places, right?
So it's a whole host of things. It's a cross-cutting thing. It cuts across all the sectors. It has something to do with even the Constitution. How are we structured to make sure that policies work, to make sure that we derive the right policies? How do we allocate power in the country between the top and the bottom, between the center and the local? How do we distribute power between the executive and the legislature? How is politics done within our parties? All of these things have tremendous impact on how we govern this country. And from our survey, what was obvious was that while Ghana is widely celebrated internationally as a country that does very nice elections and that transfers power peacefully from one party to the other, the clear emerging consensus is that we are also among the countries that govern very poorly. So we do very good elections. We transfer power peacefully, the best in Africa. We don't fight, we don't have a record of civil war and all of those things, but we govern in between elections very poor and disappointing. So increasingly, our star status as our shine is beginning to wane a bit. Those who have followed that consistently and thought that we should be way ahead of where we are now are disappointed largely on account of the way the country is governed consistently. So governance is important. So what did we focus on? We focused on a number of things in government. The thematic areas that came up were the constitutional system, how power is allocated among the various players within the state and within our politics. So the issues that came up included, again, even in spite of the fact that we didn't go ahead with the referendum in December, the issue of local government and the fact that local communities still do not have the right or the opportunity at the local level to choose the most important political office holder at that level, which is their mayor or their district chief executive. This has been with us since the colonial days. Ghana has never experienced a system where local communities choose their own political executive power holders. That's quite unusual. You go to a number of countries in Africa, whether it's Dakar, whether it's Freetown, whether it's Uganda or Kenya, even though we are considered a better democracy on paper than they are, they've been electing their mayors for some time. Local communities elect their mayors. So we run a democracy that is so lopsided, all the power is in Accra, and also when you go to Accra, all the power is in one place, in Accra. Right? So not only is it in Accra, it's in Jubilee House. And when you go to Jubilee House, it's in one office. Right? So this disproportionate concentration of power is one of the big governance issues. Why is it a big issue? It's the bureaucrats and the technocrats. And so you have a system that is almost operating like 100% politics. You know, the civil servants are just put there, and they bring their own people. You know, so how are we going to rebuild the civil service? Because after you've done your policy, you need the civil service to implement it. Even if you won't take their advice from the beginning, which that's what other civil services do. They are the technocrats who give you advice, but they're also the ones who implement your policy. How are we going to build a civil service so that we don't have to rely on politics alone to run this country? There's nothing wrong with politics, but you cannot run a system where it's 100% politics and no public administration. You know, so we flag this problem of the civil service. How are we going to make sure that the balance between politics and public administration is restored so that there are appropriate roles for both, because both are important? Then we came back to local government. Apart from the constitutional problem of the non-elected mayors, which we think is a problem, and identified as a problem, we also, from our research, came up with the problem of extremely low progress in fiscal decentralization. You know, it's easy to do, it's not even that easy, administrative decentralization, but the money oftentimes never really comes. It still stays at the top. And it's money from the top. And very little money is going out to local communities, which is where lives are lived. You know, Ghana is actually all local. That's where people live. Even in Accra, that people live in Teshi and that's where people live. Nobody lives in Jubilee House, right? So that's where the country is. It's at the local level. But resources, the constitution only says 5% common fund, whatever. Maybe now it's about 7%. But it means that the rest of the money is kept and distributed by political discretion. So there is a lot of money that is not getting to the local level. So these are the big thematic issues that we picked up in the governance area. And many of our experts, almost all of them who did the various sectors, also picked specific governance problems within those sectors. So in health, there are specific governance bottlenecks in health that is standing in the way of the health sector delivering maybe chips compounds or that. Agriculture, governance problems there. So this is what we have found in our various studies and research. And as I said, as the various speakers have said, what we really want you to do with this document is engage it, critique it, add on to the space. You can actually analyze it. You know, add more to it, take some away from it. And if you disagree, yeah, in fact, we'll give you our access so that you let us know. But we were not doing this through individual consultations. That's probably why we didn't capture everything. But the idea is use this to engage the political class. That's the ones with the power to implement and devise solutions. We can demand, but they have to supply. So this is trying to bring supply and demand together so that we can together promote development in this country. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this publication has been crafted by very learned, brilliant, innovative, and selfless people. This publication has been crafted by very learned, innovative, and selfless people who think about the development of the individual Ghanaian in this country. It is a document which should be embraced by all, since its aim is to make sure that we all in Ghana live nicely as human beings. A document which makes sure that whatever our 1992 Constitution wants for us, we get them. Therefore, everyone here should join me and those with me here to duly inaugurate this indispensable document. It is in this vein that on our behalf, I duly inaugurate this wonderful and important document. Thank you very much. Can you help us do the distribution?
Involvement of private sector in education, issues about education financing, are we spending the 6% of GDP as required? And then more resources diverted into secondary education to the neglect of basic education, JSS. Then my professor also touched a lot about governance issues. He started by saying that most of our problems that cuts across within the sector is a governance issue. So he emphasized on the following, that politicians do not find the incentive to address this challenge. His common terminology is perverse incentive. The incentive is not attractive for politicians to make some of the reforms required to bring the needed change and transformation required. He spoke about the disproportionate concentration of power, especially between parliament and executive, independent constitutional bodies appointed by the president, creating problems of issues of distrust. How do we build trust in these institutions? He spoke about the size of government, campaign financing, also a key factor in political corruption. Public procurement, also grounds for political corruption. Issues about Auditor General's report, what happens to it? Currently there is surcharge and disallowance. How are we going to scale that initiative to institutionalize the process and ensure that we recover funds that have gone into the wrong pockets? Government of state enterprises. There is SEGA, State Interest and Governance Authority. How do we use this vehicle to also transform the state enterprises, commissions, and state agencies? He made a very important point that they are a critical mass that contributes to the GDP of the country. And then Prentice has displayed our public administration system. We need a strong balance between public service and politics. We need to restore that disproportionate balance that currently exists. So a few of the comments I took from Professor and Mr. Ahitocheka. At this juncture, we use the next 15 minutes, open the floor, comments, contributions, make it very brief.
Children in basic school and SS. And it is the same challenges. Negligence by parents, children allowed to engage in child labor, and then early sexual encounters, including child marriage for the girls. I work a lot with the trotro mates, and I always tell them that, well, I see that they engage the girls who walk around the place, and then also school children after school. So one day I went there, one boy said, "Auntie, I've been looking for you. You know the problem now. Those girls the president allowed to go to school free still come to us for money, and will definitely make them pregnant and they will stop." And I found it very instructive. But we have never, as civil society, focused on the boys who do the trotro. Now we also have girls getting into it, and it is now free, a free fall for the boys to get as many. But then my point is, we cannot invest, however small, in basic and secondary education. Then neglect components like parent-child communication, which will let the children talk to their parents who don't give them food, decent clothes before they go to school. They want to engage them, they cannot. And then sexual education for both boys and girls, to understand that if I do this at this time, it will jeopardize my future.
I earlier mentioned of disabilities. And coming out of disabilities, our manifestos, our politician always come out with our nice manifestos. I don't see the reason why much have been captured on their manifestos as part of the president's disabilities. Because if you look at our disability at 11.5, you have much reasons that have to be attended to. But always when we come, they always start on our implement of our disability cover fund. And that is not fair. As a part of the 40-year development plan, we put much input. I add now input to that 40-year development plan. If our politicians go along with their manifesto, at least 20% of the policies of the all that we add up to the 40-year development plan, I think it will go a long way for us. Because we don't want to say just let me say this, just that this government has at least empowered or encouraged us to establish a tools for us to manage. And sometimes, some months ago, he empowered our women entrepreneurs. But I don't see why we are always left out and not having focused on our disability to be implemented and add up the LI for us to be fully implementation. Thank you very much. That was my submission.
My name is Juma. I'm the program coordinator for Life for Children. I'm very interested in education. The political parties will come out of nice policies, of nice manifestos, programming. But according to United Nations, for them, they are interested in programs or projects that are targeted. So we look at a manifesto like Flint Senior High School. This manifesto or this program is recent to a lot of people in Ghana. But does it address everything? It is only very does it address everything? The education system is against untargeted programs. So we should make sure that CDD, we make sure that for us to have informed decision, and most of the manufacturers coming out. Apart from CDD coming out concept notes where the programs face Ghana and better on it, I want them to go further to scrutinize the programs and the program of the manifestos and see, one, it is targeted one, and it can help us to improve our socioeconomic or reduce our socioeconomic program ability in the country. If we can go further, instead of maybe just profiling the problem they are facing in Ghana to the parties to come out with resolutions. Thank you.
My name is Christopher Dabawu, local government network government. Senior Kofi, Prof, we are very grateful to you, more especially to CDD. CDD happen to be a member of government. We are proud of you for taking this important intervention. My concern has nothing to do with the manifesto issues which we are all deliberating on. And I'm happy Prof mentioned that they are willing to link up with other documents, including the national development plans and other things. That was the lacuna out there with their manifestos. Most of the manifestos that we read before, if you align it with the national development plan, they were not in tandem. So we realized that parties were doing their own thing. Meanwhile, we have a national development which will have been maybe a bend to that manifesto. They can restructure it anyhow that will suit them. Giving precise example to this 1 million per constituency fund. CDD, we had some collaboration with them, visited some of the districts, and you realize that the way it was mentioned to citizens, as the money was coming to the constituency, for them to do it was different from the way it was being implemented or it has been implemented. So we just want to find out where do they get all these support if they are not in line with the district development plans. We visited some of these communities and rather than even going through their development plans, this constitution issue was not there. Meanwhile, the infrastructures were even enhanced within said communities. Community directors were not aware. And I'm going forward to say that we are now moving to another segment of the this orientation policy, with Prof mentioned about physical issues. This physical issue has not been our own people, and now the are being brought. I want to challenge the party functionaries. How are they going to convince us that this time round they will respond to the National Development Plan, having been guided by this CDD document?
Women in livelihood development. I think a big thank you go to CDD for this extensive work that they've done. I think upon all the things Prof touched, then ending his speech, we all realize that all these things boil down to one thing, that is problem with governance. You could see that all these simple problems that we've been mentioning point to just one direction, governance. So we are challenging the political parties. These manifestos should be in line with our national development plan. And that is what we are all in full support with CDD, that we are really going to take this project far, so that we will test them as such and they will do the right thing. Thank you.
The issue that you raised about the girl child and the peculiar issues of the girl child are actually raised between the sessions, the sub-theme on children and gender. Some of those issues appear there. So we continue to talk about the persistence of child trafficking, trafficking of children. Children continue to be trafficked from poorer regions to urban centers, forced into exploitative labor in fishing, street vending, begging, and domestic servitude. Problems with the Juvenile Justice Act and Children's Act that are not enforced. Gender-based crimes, including defilement, underage rape. We have flagged those issues are still very, very key issues. On education, in fact, the weak school management is a big problem. And all the literature on school management really talks about the role of parents in that whole arrangement. So some of the issues are in different parts of the document, not always described the same way in the same language. On disability, for example, we raised multiple issues there. The built environment, which is just how the whole country, how our spaces are built and organized. The built environment remains physically inaccessible to persons with disabilities despite legislation from 2006. And in fact, my predecessor is disabled, right? Professor Jima is a person with disability. We went for a program in Parliament. The auditorium where that Parliament, well, the program was built, was built after 2006, and he couldn't get there. Yeah. So he actually raised the issue through me. He says, "Look, you built this thing after the bill was passed, after the Disabilities Act was passed in 2006. CDD worked on that bill with you. You built this structure before, after this bill was passed, and I can't get in. There's no access." So the issue of the way our built environment continues to be, persons with disabilities don't have access. So we raised all of those issues of that kind. We didn't talk about the elderly every day. And with longevity rates, people are living long. Ghana has one of the lowest rates of elderly pension in Africa, not even just global in Africa. So issues about elderly poverty is a big issue. We raised some of those issues here. So when you go through the document, you will find in different places some of the concerns have been raised. The point you made about not going beyond proffering, just identifying problems. We had a difficulty there. We really had to wrestle with this a little bit because we didn't want to be met with this thing by the parties. Well, if you think you can solve the problems, why don't you form your own party and go and do it? You know, parties are organized around certain ideologies and interests and issues. And they come to us asking for a mandate so that they will go and solve certain problems. So we decided to stick with that division of labor. We will go out and find the issues, feed some of them to you, you tell us how we're going to solve. But we're not going to leave you after you tell us. After the manifestos come, like we said, the second part of this program is to engage the public on the manifestos. How are you, is this a real solution? Is it going to solve this problem? We'll come back to you and with you engage the parties on that. But sometimes we have identified problems that sometimes the solution comes out of the problem. The way the problem is stated, you have an idea what to do about it, pretty much. Right? So that's one way to deal with it. The National Development Plan issue is a big question. It is clearly going to be very difficult to get a National Development Plan agreed among all parties that this is what we are going to adopt. The parties have to find a way to differentiate themselves one from the other. That is part of what multi-party democracy is that you have parties, but they differentiate themselves like Pepsi and Coke. You have to find a different brand, how you brand yourselves, right? So by all means, I think one of the things driving this project is that even though we cannot get the parties to buy into a national development plan, once we have consensus on what the common problems are, we might gradually get towards some convergence that regardless of your disapproval of the idea of national development plans, if the problems are the same and they be defined the same way, some of them can only be solved a particular way. So maybe we will end up getting around the national development plan problem. But this is part of what we are trying to do as a people. We will say that this is a clever way around that problem. That if they cannot agree on a common platform, maybe the approach then is to let them agree on a common problem. And say, okay, this is a common problem, and this is how we're going to do it, this is how the other one is going to do it. And maybe in between the two, you could say that there's fairly close convergence sometimes. So these are very important suggestions. It's something that we've talked through, and like I said, this is the very first time we've approached this problem this way. We're hoping that in every election cycle we will get improvements on it, and we'll get to a point where we might get them actually to buy seriously into this as a document that's been used in their campaign. So,
but I want to throw back the very beginning to the audience. If you have followed the discussion we've had from the beginning, you realize that this document has been thrown over to you as the beginning of a new thinking around how we can engage political manifestos. As we said, this time we are not recommending that in order to reduce traffic congestion in Accra, increase the number of flyovers. But we are saying that there is traffic congestion in Accra and that has to be solved. And the interesting thing is that we present the same issues to all the political parties. So Party A will say our solution is more flyovers. Party B will say no. Instead of that, we think that it is also costing us fuel money. So we look at it this way. We reduce the number of cars that come to the city center by imposing a tax, get money, and maybe we can then now do additional flyover. So everybody understands the problem. So the issues are presented. But the interesting thing here is that this is literally a proposition from CDD to all of us. Now you are the people to look at it, and as Paul said, if there are gaps, we will fill it. And go back to the political parties and say, look, these are issues. We want certain issues to be addressed. And we are not only giving it to one party, we are giving to all of you, and we want to get this thing addressed. So I think that nobody should think that it is again now CDD's responsibility to go and get answers to these issues. No. What CDD has done is to now open the door so that we now begin a new discourse in terms of how we want to contribute to the development of manifestos and get solutions to what we believe are our biggest concerns. So let's begin to start thinking around that dynamic, so that eventually we will now be saying that, hey, look, these are the problems, let's solve it. These are the issues, let's solve it. My brother was talking about LI. I mean, yeah, if there is no LI to the Disability Act and it's an issue, tell the political parties. Why is it that we don't have LI to the disability this thing? And look out, if you think that party A says that when we come to power, we will do an LI and that will ensure that the true benefits will come to all disabled people, and you think you like that, then you vote for that party. So we want to create a situation where this time round we are not suggesting anything to anybody. We believe that political parties are thinking groups, and they themselves will do their own introspective analysis and come out with real solutions that will not limit the range of solutions, but will allow them to broaden it, and then at the end of the day we can make the kind of progress that we want to make as a people and as a country.
Actions of a database and system for rational and effective targeting needs testing of expenditures and transfers. Without a good database of citizens and a sufficiently formal economy, transfers are not well targeted, resulting in misallocated expenditure. So you used VHS as one case, but this is a general comment on how we spend money. That we just throw money at a problem without actually targeting it, and it leads to a lot of wasteful expenditure. So that problem, for example, is captured here, but in a different context, right? But it applies broadly.
Yeah. I think I'll be given only 2 minutes, so I'll first of all congratulate the CDD for what they've done today. The first one is on the $1 million per constituency. I think when we talk about the manifestos, what we have to do is to make sure that people read it and then understand it. Reading the manifesto alone doesn't make a point. By understanding what the manifesto says, because as I was talking about, he says, this is what they told us. Was that what you read from the manifesto? I think the answer is no. So we should all take time out and then read the manifesto word by word so that we know what the manifesto means. I.e., when we talk about the $1 million per constituency, the money wasn't supposed to be given to the people in the constituency. Some boards have been formed, that is the Northern Belt, the Middle Belt, and the Coastal Belt. Those are the people that are responsible for taking care of that money. So if there's any constituency within the Middle Belt that wants to do a project or to suggest for a project, they will put all the things that they need on paper, send it to the board, and then the board will make sure that the job is executed through your $1 million per constituency. The government also has its own projects that it wants to be done, i.e. the supply of the ambulances. That is part of the things that the government wants to be done, and it's also coming out from the $1 million per constituency. But we have the constituency-specific projects that will come out from the constituency through the district assemblies or whatever that will enable them to do that particular project for you. So let us do well to read the manifestos and then understand what the party wants to do. Secondly, I also want us to look at one thing where people will follow up on what we talked about in our manifesto. There should be a follow-up. I think everything in the manifesto all heads towards what we put in the National Development Plan. If you talk about education, I think it's part of the National Development Plan. If you talk about roads, it's part of that. If you talk about health facilities and things like that, they are all part of the National Development Plan. So let us make follow-ups to specific things, i.e. what is government talk about the free senior school education. Let's follow it up. Has it been done? If there's something that is wrong and can be corrected, it should be done. And I don't think all the monies have been diverted to the senior high schools to disadvantage any other sector. I think you look into the MPP's programs and you can see that some monies have been set aside to have the basic, or what do you call it, the the nursery to the basic school, infrastructures, about 1,000 of them being in the process of being built. So I think we all have to understand the manifestos of all the parties, i.e. my party's manifesto, and then let us all tackle it one by one. I can assure you that if you go through the New Patriotic Party's manifesto, you can see and then attest to the fact that every bit of it has been attempted to some extent. We can mention it one by one. I don't think you have all the time to talk about it. But we go through it one by one by one. I can assure you that every aspect of it has been attempted. And that I want us all to go by that, and that will, in a way, help us to really come out with the system. What are we doing about the manifesto? Did you read the manifesto? Is it being implemented? If the answer is no, I think then we can seriously have a case. Let me thank you all once again and thank the CDD for giving us this opportunity.
The National Democratic Congress has always presented realistic manifestos that are measurable. And what CDD has done today is to open up the thematic areas. They've given us 10 thematic areas that should be our focus. And I think it is in consonance with our already existing policies and for the designing or drawing up of our manifestos. I think we are very happy to be part of it. And it is also going to augment what we are already doing on the ground. We will not come up with policies that are not realistic, that are not measurable. We assure all Ghanaians that we will continue to be truthful to everyone, and we are so happy to be part of the program. Thank you very much.
And then to the executive director, some of us have been following on Facebook. All we have are the level-minded, objective people, not necessarily neutral, because I don't believe in us having someone who is neutral as far as our politics is concerned. I don't believe in that. I only believe we have objective people, people who will say the truth, who identify the truth, and actually address it accordingly. I also want to acknowledge the fact that the research work, honestly, as a student of research, I would say that the work is very superb. When we look at the procedure, in the Hausa language, we say that I am a Bikichi Adelichi. That is to say that the procedure has been followed duly, which actually means that it's something we have to embrace. Now, my issue has to do with governance, and I do acknowledge that is the main problem, just like all of us have actually identified. Truly, I only liken our governance system to our informal sector, where things are done haphazardly. And for that matter, I'm not surprised when you are even listening to our political discussions, it's done in such a way, in the same manner, no formula. It's all about the bread and butter, not necessarily what really goes into actual governance. The campaign promises are made on the freebies, free education, free this, free that, and not necessarily looking at what is really bringing up these freebies we are enjoying. Finally, I would like to say something about education, and I think that your research has confirmed what some of us have actually believed, that there was no need for us to be upgrading the teacher training institutions to the diploma and then the degrees and so on, because your research, as you just indicated, 98% of our students do not meet the learning outcome. An indication that even though we upgraded the teacher training to a diploma level, and yet the outcome is still the same. And when you go to these private schools, those teaching there are not those who have gone through any educational training. So it's like even our technical institutions are now competing with the universities for the same student and for the same program. So we are really in a serious situation. And that is to say that it's also boiled down on the fact that we have two-party system. We are heading towards a two-party system. And I'm saying this because I belong to a third force, a third political party, and I think we are not being supported. We cannot do it alone as a political party coming up as a third force. We can't do it alone.
we need the support of everybody, especially civil society organization. Kindly, in your own way, not necessarily, we're not talking about finance. Let's all push the agenda for a task force. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
First of all, let me congratulate CDD for your workshops, which has been with us for a long time. In fact, I'm happy to be part of this program because it has been a headache for some of us all this while concerning our manifestos. You could see that the manifesto is going to different directions, whereas the state's own policy is going to another different direction. So you will be surprised that most of the years when there's change of government, most of the projects are abandoned because it seems to be a party's project. It's a party that is doing it, and if they are not there, I don't see the reason why I should continue. But in a way, if you make a state policy, where funds have been allocated, passed by the state, you have no alternative than to continue, because that is the policy of the state. So I commend you very well for that, and I can assure you that since you have engaged my party at the top level, we in the regional level are ready to cooperate at all levels. Except that I would like to also give some recommendations to what you're doing. First, let the political parties give us a clear, unambiguous manifesto. A manifesto that will not be interpreted again when they are in power. And when this time we will be told to go and read the huge voluminous one before you will understand. What they will say on the platform should be what is going to happen. And also, I want you to also avert our minds, all the political parties, to our educational level. We are in a country where if you are SS graduate, you are not employable. Nobody graduates from SS and said I can be employed. If you hear people saying we are employing SS, they are going to be salesboy who will be following a car, advertising for a movie or whatever. I want to see a situation where somebody graduates from SS. We can say yes, he's employed. For example, if I go to SS and I do accounting, I can be an accountant clerk in an institution. Once I am there, I can upgrade myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've learned a lot today. And we have been privileged to sit at the feet of some very, very learned people in our society. In the first place, we learned about what was put into getting the publication done. After that, thanks to Mr. Moderator, whatever the panelists discussed, he has summarized everything for me. What I want to tell all of us is that many Ghanaians want to go to Europe, USA, and other countries which are flourishing economies. Our pastors, malams, medicine men use this to advertise for the potency of their objects of trade. Musicians use it in their lyrics to attract customers to their music. Why should the nation encourage people to travel outside the country for greener pastures elsewhere? The answer lies in the weak performance of our institutions, which has made Ghana, which is well endowed with human and material resources, a poverty-stricken nation. Corruption in the fabric of the society has exacerbated our woes, and our system of education, which prioritizes white-collar jobs over technical and vocational ones, have all contributed in landing Ghana into a quagmire of abject poverty. We therefore appreciate the sterling effort of the CDD in espousing the inclusive manifestos or inclusive manifesto making of political parties in order to bring Ghanaians directly into the decision making of the country and for our collective good. Personally, I want to appeal to all stakeholders in development to emulate the effort of the CDD, which is contributing to make Ghanaians live in dignity as human beings. Prof praised his peer for being a very good person, brilliant and all that. Do you know what? This morning, I is being assailed by a pandemic we have called, or we call COVID-19, in order to stay alive, in order to contribute to the development of our families, our communities, Ghana and ourselves. We all have to abide by the safety protocols so that we stay safe and healthy. Thank you very much for today's program, honoring today's program and learning a lot that will help us in the development.
It's our prayer that wherever you find yourself, you will continue to find this document very useful and then use it in your various conversations and conveyings. I also want to thank our discussants